In this video, I'm going to be going over exactly how much dividend income I made in the month of November from a $216,000 account. And to analyze this, we're going to be jumping into my ticker data, do-it-yourself investor toolkit, and looking at my investment dashboard, my dividend dashboard, my dividend calendar, my daily dividend calendar, and like always, we're also going to be projecting out my portfolio to see how long it will take me to achieve my long-term goal of one day being able to live off dividend income. And like always, if you'd like to download this spreadsheet or any of my other spreadsheets, you can head over to tickerdata.com at the link in the description. Tickerdata is a spreadsheet integration tool that allows you to automatically import stock financials straight into your spreadsheet. And we're getting ready to release even more powerful spreadsheets here in the next few weeks. Now, I'd also like to say thank you to Seeking Alpha for sponsoring this video. They also have a Black Friday sale going on, but more on that later. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Now, November was a very rare month for the market. Not only the market, but for me. I did something I haven't done in years in the month of November. I didn't contribute anything to my portfolio. For the first time in many years, probably more than 5 years, I made zero contributions to my portfolio. But if we look up here, let's go ahead and zoom in. We can see my portfolio value is now at an all-time high. It's at $216,571. And again, this all-time hit was because of the huge run we've seen in the market over the past month. It's pretty amazing. Look at the S&P 500 in the past month alone, up close to 4%. Even more impressive, look at SCHD, up close to around 5%. This is the largest position in my portfolio. And if we look at the heat map of the past month of the S&P 500, it's pretty amazing how much green there is. Look at the financial market. Stocks like Visa, up around 8.6%. MasterCard, up close to 4%. AXP, up around 11.25%. Come over here, we can see Apple, a stock I own in my portfolio, is up around 3%. And if we look at the performance over the past year, I don't think anybody could have expected what we see. We see green pretty much everywhere we look. We see companies growing at 10, 20, or even 30%. And keep in mind, 2023 was a great year for the market. As good as it was, I don't think people expected 2024 to be even better. And this is why it's so important to stay invested in the market for the long term. Nobody can predict what's going to happen. So all the gains that I've seen in my portfolio over the last month are purely from the compounding effect. It's from seeing gains from stocks in my portfolio. It's from stocks increasing their dividend payouts in my portfolio. And it's also from me reinvesting my dividends. And to show you how powerful the snowball effect has been in the past month, if we jump over to my dividend dashboard and just look at my portfolio value, look at this. Last month, my portfolio value was sitting at $208,000, and now it's sitting at over $216,000. So we're talking about an $8,000 gain in a matter of just a month without contributing anything to my portfolio. So if we come down here, we can now see I'm up around 40.2% when you include dividends and realized gains. And keep in mind, this is not a time-weighted gain, so in reality, it's even higher. Now, where are the majority of these gains coming from? Well, if we come down, let's look at my growth chart. I now have 4 different positions that are up over 100%. And let's start with the top, Broadcom, AVGO. I'm currently up around 220% on this position. Look at Jefferies Financial, up around 161%. This is not a popular stock, but I saw Warren Buffett a few years ago added it to his portfolio, and I never ever recommend buying any stock just because somebody you admire does. But I looked closer into this position, and I realized I really liked what I saw. I made a position, and obviously it's done very well since then. So again, looking at moves of people you respect doesn't mean you should buy it, but it can be a pretty good place to start looking for opportunities, and that one definitely paid off. Come over here, look at Caterpillar, I'm up around 132%. JP Morgan, again, financials have done really good in the past month. I'm up around 138% on this position, and plenty of other positions up over 50%. EPD, a big dividend payer, I'm up around 72.6%. Microsoft, 60%. Come over here, we can see Bank of America, 78%. Lowe's, 54.86%. And come over here, we can see Apple stock, I'm up around 72%, and Waste Management pretty close to 50% at about 48%. Now, these other positions aren't doing bad. In fact, most of them are up around 20 or even 30%, or like Visa, even 40%. But let's talk about the losers for a moment. We have INTC. This has been a big loser in my portfolio, and this is actually one of the smallest positions in my portfolio, so the losses from it have been pretty minimal. But then we have Target, another relatively small position that I'm pretty flat on. I'm down around 2.47% after the huge sell-off in the last month. But then we have one of the more interesting positions in my portfolio. We have Louis Vuitton, stock ticker LVMHF, and it's down around 11%. And this is actually a position I added to my portfolio over the past year. But here's why this position is so interesting recently. Bernard Arnault, one of the richest men in the entire world, has been loading up on shares. Look at the insider purchases from this stock over the past month. There have been a ton of purchases, and in fact, if we start to scroll down, we can see Bernard Arnault himself has added shares on multiple occasions over the past month. He added shares on November 22nd, the 21st, the 20th, the 19th, the 18th, the 15th, 14th, 13th, 12th, 6th, he's been loading up on shares, and after all these purchases, he's likely going to own over 50% of the entire company. And for example, if we jump over to Seeking Alpha, let's look at this position. We can see over the past year, it's down around 18%, trading at its 52-week low. So he's loading up at this 52-week low. That should give you confidence as an investor in this stock. Now, it doesn't mean you should buy. You should do more research, but again, it is a positive sign. Now, if we come over here to the left, again, we can see cost to market value. It's similar to my growth chart, but basically we can see the gains we've seen compared to the amount we've put into the position. So a good example, SCHD, I plugged in around 79,000 over the years, and it's currently worth over 100,000. If we look at my allocation, I'm currently pretty light on cash, only around a 7% cash allocation. If we look at total holdings, I'm sitting at about 28. I'm hoping to get this closer to around 25 over the long term after I sell out of some positions that I feel might not align with my long-term goal of one day living off dividends. If we come up here, we can see my allocation. Again, SCHD by far my largest position because it fits in really well with my long-term goal of one day being able to live off dividend income. It has a nice starting dividend yield, phenomenal dividend growth, and has seen really good returns from capital appreciation over the years, and they're getting ready to pay out their Q4 dividend payment. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. But other than that, my two largest positions, we have Visa stock at about 6%, a stock I'm up around 40% on and has been increasing their dividends at a high rate. And then we have Microsoft, around 6.6% of my total portfolio. Again, a stock I'm up around 60% on like we just saw. These are two companies with low starting dividend yields, but they have phenomenal competitive advantages. They see massive share price appreciation and they increase their dividends at a high rate. And if we come down even further, we can simply see my allocation by individual industry. Now, I don't have my ETFs broken out, but again, SCHD is pretty well diversified. It doesn't have a lot of technology exposure, but I'm pretty happy with it overall. Plus, we can see technology is where most of my capital is actually allocated at about 14.8%. And keep in mind, Visa is technically a financial stock, but I would argue you could say it's actually a technology stock. So keep that in mind as well. We can see if we come down here, financials at about 11.9%. But again, I think Visa is more of a tech stock in my opinion. Consumer cyclical around 6.6%. We have healthcare 3.8%, consumer defensive around 4.4%. And if we come down here, industrials at about 3.6%. Now, if we look over here, we can see my future portfolio outlook, but we're going to talk about that just a little bit later. Let's go ahead and zoom out and look at what everybody wants to see. And that's going to be my dividend dashboard and how much I made in dividend income in the month of November. So let's go ahead and jump over to it and start breaking this down. If we go ahead and start to zoom in quite a bit, let's look at it right here. We can see November was one of my lower months. We have a clear trend of a high month followed by a couple of lower months. The month of November, I brought in around $178.22 in dividend income. And before you get upset, again, yes, we're talking about a $216,000 portfolio. You might be thinking, that seems like a really low amount for a portfolio that is that size. Well, to start out, let's go ahead and come up here. What you have to understand first is my average monthly dividends is sitting about $518. So again, on a monthly basis, on average, I'm bringing in $518.52. So yes, this is the lower month. We can see on the higher months right now, I'm bringing in over $1,000. But here's an even more important concept we have to understand. Even if you think average monthly dividends of $518 is low for a $216,000 portfolio, you have to understand, I'm what you would call a dividend growth investor. I'm investing for the long term to maximize dividend income over the long term so I can live off dividends sustainably. Let me show you an example of what I mean, and this is such an important concept to understand that a lot of beginner investors don't understand. I could put all of my capital into high-yielding investments and immediately start making more in dividend income every single month. For example, we're looking at an example where we don't reinvest dividends. If I put all my capital into high-yielding dividend stocks, I'd be making far more than I would with dividend growth stocks right now, which again, I'm a dividend growth investor. But the thing with dividend growth stocks is because they reliably increase their dividend payouts over time, eventually dividend growth stocks start to pay out more in dividends than high-yielding dividend stocks because high yielders don't increase their dividends at a high rate if they increase them at all. Now, you're probably thinking, well, yes, that's if you don't reinvest dividends. What if we do reinvest dividends? Well, the same is actually true. It just takes longer for dividend growth to surpass high-yielding investments. If you're reinvesting those dividends, yes, high-yielding pays more for quite some time, but over the long term, again, dividend growth still pays more than high-yielding dividend stocks. So that doesn't necessarily mean one is better than the other. You just have to ask yourself, what's my time frame as an investor? What are my goals? Because if you're trying to maximize dividend income in the short term, yes, you actually want to lean more towards high-yielding investments. But if you're investing for the long term, like I am, you probably want to focus more on dividend growth. So that probably gives you more context into why this month was so low and average monthly dividends is sitting about $518. Now, if we zoom out a little bit, we can see I actually hit a milestone this month. My all-time dividend income since I've started tracking this is now over $10,000. So $10,000 have come into my account and have been reinvested back into my portfolio over time. And we can see my expected yearly dividend income is now sitting at $6,222. Let's put this in perspective. Say my monthly cost of living is around $4,000 every month. That's basically like saying my dividend income could pay for 1.5 months of freedom every single year. That's the amount of time where my dividend income could completely cover all of my life expenses. And I think that's the way a lot of people should start thinking about dividend income. And the beautiful thing about my dividend income is it's going to continue to grow at a high rate regardless of my monthly contributions. Again, because I'm reinvesting dividends, and more importantly, because the stocks in my portfolio increase dividend payments at a high rate. So for example, let's go ahead and zoom in. I want to show you my projected annual dividend income over the past few months. If we go ahead and blow up this chart a little bit again, you can see my projected annual dividend income grows every single month regardless of market performance, simply because I reinvest dividends and the stocks I hold increase their dividend payouts regardless of how they're performing. If you're buying high quality stocks, even if their share price is going down, their dividend payments are going to continue to grow, and that's exactly what we're seeing with my projected annual dividend income. This is what makes dividend investing so addictive. And so if we come up here and look at my dividend yield on cost, yes, I do have a few higher yielding positions like EPD and MO, which have actually both performed really well for me, but the vast majority is going to be dividend growth stocks that increase their dividend payouts at a high rate. And for example, look at Broadcom. My yield on cost is around 4.08%. But if we go over to Seeking Alpha and look at Broadcom, let's plug it in, ABGO, we can see their starting dividend yield right now is sitting at just 1.33%. Why is my yield on cost so much higher? Well, it's because I bought in at a great price and because they've been increasing dividends at such a high rate. In fact, if we come over here and click on dividends and look at the dividend history for this company, let's look at it over the past 10 years. Look at how fast they've been increasing their dividend payouts. This is my absolute favorite thing to see out of stocks that I own in my portfolio, and again, the share price will follow. For example, what history has told us is stocks that grow their dividends actually outperform over time. Look at this chart, dividend growers and initiators. If you invested $100 back in 1973, it'd now be worth over $14,118. Meanwhile, just dividend payers is sitting about $8,756. And dividend non-payers is sitting at about $843. Then finally, if we jump back over to my dividend breakdown and look at my dividend income by industry, the majority of my dividend income is coming from ETFs right now, SCHD primarily. We can also see real estate makes up about 13% of my dividend income. Come down here, we can see financial services around 6%, consumer defensive around 8.3%, and then technology coming in at about 7.2%. And if we zoom out just a little bit, come over here, we can see exactly how much dividend income each stock is paying me. Here's some big payers. We have Altria paying around $387, Vici around $483, then the big one, SCHD, currently paying me on average about $3,340 every single year in dividend income. Now next, I want to jump over and look at my dividend calendar, but first, I want to say thank you to Seeking Alpha for sponsoring this video. Seeking Alpha is currently running a pretty massive Black Friday sale along with a 7-day free trial, so there's a link down in the description if you're interested, but you've already seen me using this tool quite a bit in this video, and it's a tool I've been using for years now. With Seeking Alpha, you can get easy access to all 3 of the financial statements and quite a bit of history with the data. We can easily get insights into the dividends for the company, and really important, we can also see earnings estimates, earnings revisions. We can see transcripts of the earnings calls as well. We can see profitability ratios. We can see valuation metrics pretty easily just by clicking on the valuation tab. And then actually one of my favorite things about Seeking Alpha is the charting. I can easily select the stock I want to see and look at it versus the S&P 500 over different periods of time. And if I want to look at something other than price return, I can do that pretty easily as well. I can just click on select metrics, and for example, maybe I want to look at valuation. Maybe I want to look at the price to cash flow ratios. I can just click update chart and we can easily see price to cash flow ratios for Broadcom versus any stock that we want to add. Their Black Friday sale is getting ready to end, so if you have any interest at all, now is definitely the time to check them out. Now, if we go ahead and jump over to my dividend calendar, what's going on here? Well, this is basically a way, if we zoom in, you can see I'm tracking how much I'm making in dividends every single month, how much each position has paid me in dividends over the lifespan of holding that position, but most importantly, it's very easy to see how dividend payments are growing over time because I buy stocks that increase dividends and because I reinvest dividends. And the easiest example of this that I always point out is going to be Realty Income, and that's just because they pay out on a monthly basis. Look at this, you can see every single month, like clockwork, the amount they pay out to me in dividends is increasing. So for example, $5.83 back in January of 2022. Zoom forward, look at November of 2022, we're up to $6.84. Move forward even more, July of 23, $21.50. Move forward even more, March of 24, $26, and if we look at my most recent dividend payout from them, it was $27.76. So it's really easy to see how it's getting exciting to see those dividend payments increase over time. So let's look and see exactly which stocks pay me dividends this month. Starting out, we have EPD, $19.81, Realty Income, $27.76. Come down here, we have Starbucks paying out about $18.17, a $28.46 payment from Lowe's, a stock I've owned in my portfolio for a while now that's done very well. $9.85 from Jeppy. Again, this is probably a position I'm going to sell out soon because it just doesn't fit into my long-term goals. There are some pros that I really like about Jeppy. I'll probably make a video on this in the future, but again, with my long-term goals of living off dividends and growing dividend payments, this position could be on the chopping block. Now, we have a $45.21 payment from Texas Instruments, Caterpillar, $5.86, 20.5 from Jefferies Financial, and then a small payment from Apple at $2.53. So again, that all totals up to around $178.22. So now let's look at my daily dividend calendar. This one's pretty fun to look at because basically you can just see what days you were paid dividend, how much you've been paid total for the year, and what your highest day is. So my highest day so far this year, sitting at about $890.85. But what's exciting is SCHT typically pays out their largest dividend payment of the year in December. So this will likely bump up over the next month. We can see my 2024 total dividend payments is sitting at $4,753, which is already quite a bit higher than it was in 2023. And if we come down here and look at 2022, it's way higher than it was in 2022. So pretty easy to see the snowball effect in play right here. Now, again, we can see what days I was paid in November. Pretty big day here on the 12th. We have a couple of payments here middle of the month, and then a couple of decent payments on the back end as well. So obviously, yes, November is a lighter month, but December is shaping up to be my highest month of dividend income ever. It's pretty exciting to think about. So finally, let's answer the question of how far am I from achieving my long-term goal of one day being able to live off dividend income. And I built out this entire projection just to answer that question. I plug in my starting portfolio size of about 216K. We're assuming a price growth rate of 7% and dividend growth rate of around 7% over the long term and a starting dividend yield of 3.5%. Now, we're assuming monthly contributions of about $2,500. And obviously, like I said, this month I did not meet that goal. I didn't contribute anything to my portfolio, but again, this is the average we're going for. Obviously, some months it'll be quite a bit higher, and some months it could be like this month. It could be zero, but that's the goal that we're going for. Now, the thing we have to keep in mind is we don't just have to get above $4,000 on a monthly basis to live off dividends. We also have to beat inflation. And assuming the average annual inflation rate of about 2%, we can see at the end of a 30-year time period, my monthly cost of living would be $7,245. And I know inflation over the past few years has been considerably higher than this, so it's important to play with these projections. Maybe you want to bump it up all the way to 3%. It's going to change the projections quite a bit, but we'll just go with 2% for right now. If we jump over to my live off dividends analysis, we can see right here, the point at which monthly dividend payments surpasses cost of living is the point at which you could live off dividend payments forever as long as your dividend growth rate is above the rate of inflation. And that's an important point to make because I get a lot of questions of people asking, wait, when I stop reinvesting dividends, won't my cost of living start to pass my monthly dividend payments? And the answer is no, only if your dividend growth rate is above the cost of living. If your dividend growth rate is zero, then yes, eventually your cost of living would catch up to your monthly dividend payments. But let's go ahead and come over here and see exactly how far away this is. If we start scrolling down, we can see after 5 years, we're still not there. Keep scrolling down. After about 10 years, we're still not able to live off dividends. But not too far off, we can see right here, in year 13, this is the point at which we could start to live off dividends. Looks like it's really closer to about 14 years. But monthly dividends would be about $5,274, while my monthly cost of living is at $5,260. This is the point at which I could live off dividends forever, and what's really cool is my account value at that time would be about $1.8 million. Now let's get a higher view of this. If we jump back over to my investment dashboard, let's scroll down and look at my future portfolio outlook. We'll zoom in just a little bit more. We can see, assuming I'm reinvesting dividends in 5 years, I could be making around $19,500 in dividends with a portfolio value of $560K. 15 years, my yearly dividends could be around $72,600. That's pretty life-changing money. That gives you a lot of flexibility. You could do things like only work jobs that you want to work or work part-time or even move to a low cost of living area. But here's what's really crazy. In 30 years, again, assuming reinvesting dividends for the entirety of that time period, my yearly dividends could be above $376,000. It's pretty mind-blowing to think about. But here's what's interesting. If we don't reinvest dividends during this time period, that would drop all the way down to $160,000. Obviously, still a lot of money, but you can see just how much of a difference reinvesting those dividend payments can make over that time period. So there you go, that's exactly how much dividend income I made in the month of November from a $216,000 account. Again, I'm really excited for next month because it's shaping up to be my highest month of dividend income ever. Now, like always, if you'd like to get this automated portfolio tracker and also get access to the ticker data add-on in Google Sheets that allows you to automatically import stock financials straight into your spreadsheet, then you can head over to tickerdata.com at the link in the description. So with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.